Let's set the scene. It's 2010. I had just turned 18 and spent a long summer week away from home, enjoying my new freedom to come and go from my parents' house as I pleased. During the week, I crashed at friends' houses, went camping with other friends, video games, and all the cigarettes and tobacco products and snacks me and my friends could afford. My meth-addicted brother, 27. I'll be referring to him as Mac, who thought he was going to make it big in the music scene because of all the different drugs he was willing to do. He thought being on acid made him play as well as Jimi Hendrix because Hendrix did acid. This is relevant because in one of his many drug-induced rampages, Mac was convinced his USB microphone was in my room. So Mac knocks on the door while I'm away, convinces my dad that he was recording in my room and left it there. It was never there. He was never there. My dad was so wrapped around Mac's manipulative finger that he never questioned anything he did. I kept careful inventory of my room because my parents and siblings would steal from me all the time and try to use my bedroom as a storage room for all sorts of things. Thinking back, his excuse was likely just to steal from me like the rest of my family did. Mac goes into my room, tosses the place like out of a movie scene during one of his notorious benders. He flips the mattress, empties out every dresser drawer onto the floor. Nothing was left the way I had left it. After all was said and done, I had to spend 3 days cleaning and reorganizing my room because of how badly this tweaker destroyed everything of mine. Things were broken, clothes everywhere, bins and boxes dumped on the floor. It was like a tornado had rampaged through a trailer park in Iowa. My dad had heard all of this going on and did nothing. I showed my dad the mess. Dad just shrugs at me and says he's in his 20s. What do you expect me to do? How about stop his strung-out butt from tossing the place? How about at least calling him to have him clean up his mess? I replied. He practically ignored me and before walking off said he was looking for his microphone and you need to just deal with it. Going to my mom was no different. Mom was so terrorized by him that she wanted no part of anything involving him because she felt unsafe. I can't blame her. He became aggressive when challenged on anything he did wrong, realizing nothing was going to be done by my parents, and this was no matter to call the police over since Dad let him in the house. I did exactly what my dad said and dealt with it. I tried to be diplomatic at first and asked him to come clean up my room. He laughs, makes fun of me, then says I needed my microphone. I asked if he found it. I know he didn't because I knew where it was. Over in my dad's garage. He never answered. I scooped up the microphone to hide it even better. Stuffed into the rafters of an old shed on the outskirts of the property, inside of a large PVC pipe stacked up with other pipes. It's where he went to smoke his meth sometimes. So I knew he wouldn't be looking for it there due to the paranoia of being caught by any of us. I gave Mac one final warning text, clean it up or else. He again made fun of me, crybaby witch.
How difficult is it to clean your own room?
You're just a lazy piece of trash. The last one really torqued me because he was a thief and did everything he could to get out of work. Later that night, I decided to do my best Tom Petty impression. I leave my parents' house to sit around a campfire at friend's house. I waited until I left because then Mac couldn't find me. Neither could my dad. I knew my dad was going to simp for him and defend him yet again. I waited until Mac would have been nice and comfortable at home. I lit my first cigarette of the night and promised myself and nothing would stop my ensuing plan until I smoked the whole pack. I'd recently learned how to SEMS bomb. At the time, you could add the same contact into your SEMS app multiple times for a group chat. I believe it was up to 30 on the phone I had. For every one SEMS I sent him, he received 30 in total. I spent hours sending messages to Mac. If I had a cigarette in my mouth, I was text bombing him. I spent from night beam until 4 sending Mac thousands upon thousands of text and picture messages. I have now dropped a Hiroshima-sized text bomb on the fancy BlackBerry he was so proud of buying a week or two before this. For anyone wondering, it was simply a copy and pasted text that said this stops when my room is clean and a picture of the mess he had made. I alternated back and forth. This took very little effort and left him inundated with notifications every 3 seconds. This effectively dosed his phone into oblivion. It was locked up tighter than New York subway car. He could not call, text, or even open anything on his phone other than my text messages. Dad starts frantically calling me around on him. I ignored it. Then my mom calls me and leaves a voicemail for me to call him. Worried it's an emergency, I call Dad back. Dad picks up the phone, screaming at me his phone is locked up and he can't use it. You need to stop this right now. I replied he needs to go and clean up the mess he made of my room right now or just deal with it like I have to. The argument continues for a while longer. The entire time he's defending Mac tooth and nail. Eventually I broke it to my dad that there was nothing I could do to stop the flow of messages and notifications. He hung up and never brought it up again. After the smoke had cleared, pun intended, I found out Mac had his BlackBerry locked up for 10 days. He wasn't able to respond to a job offer and wasn't smart enough to leave an alternate contact. The job went to someone else by the time Mac was able to return their call. He was still going to be stuck at the job he loathed for a while longer. His phone plan had a monthly SIMs and data limit that I absolutely destroyed. The month's bill was over $300. I want to say closer to $400. His live-in girlfriend was also pissed because they had to leave the phone on and plugged into a charger to let it process the messages from my mass messaging campaign the night before. The notifications made the phone unusable, and they were stuck listening to the notification sounds for those 10 days. They tried stuffing it inside of a blanket, but the phone would get too hot, and they were worried it would start on fire. On the counter, plugged into an outlet it sat, keeping them awake and annoyed constantly. Another 2 months rolled past. I finally decided he could have his microphone back. Kind of. I took it out of hiding and stuffed it in his keyboard box. It was also stored at my parents' house. He found it there not too long after and never even apologized for what he did. Not that I ever expected him to. He even bragged about finally finding it. He never went into my room again without my permission out of fear of his phone being locked up again. Edit. The phone details. Wow, this makes me feel old. At the time, texting cost people to send and receive. I had one of the very first unlimited texting plans because I spent a stupid amount of money on a T-Mobile Sidekick to be able to get that perk. So once the deluge of messages surpassed his text data limit on the BlackBerry, it cost him more and more penalty charges as he received Samson's messages. How it remained locked up was the fact it couldn't be used due to me overloading the phone itself with messages. The best way I can describe this in more general terms is that the same would happen if you were to try sending a 10,000-page Word document to a home-grade printer, and you were forced to let it print all 10,000 pages before you could print anything else, even if you unplugged it and plugged it back in. Back during the 90s in the UK, when you're in your final years of secondary education, or you could call it your GCSE years, the schools did something called workplace experience. This was basically where you find a job where you spend 2 weeks experiencing work after you leave school. Even then, I found it pointless for many reasons. In my case, I couldn't find a job that would accept me, so the school went looking and found one for me. To make note, I wasn't the only one the school had to help on this. Well, the school found me a placement in the office at a dedicated mechanics education school. Basically, it was a mechanic shop like any other, but where the mechanics working on your car van are students training for their mechanics qualification. While I was there, I wasn't allowed to do much. Like they didn't want me there at all, so I was given menial tasks. Deliver documents to offices next door, fetch coffee, use the franking machine, and other stuff. It was like they just volunteered me to do stuff they didn't want me to do. However, when it came down to it, it was mostly simple, easy jobs. Apart from fetching coffee from the staff kitchen, I had this little room which was called the mail room. It wasn't big. I could stand in the middle of the room and touch all 4 walls. There was a desk attached to the wall and a shelf above it with a bunch of mailing bags. The usual stuff you'd find in a mailroom of an office. In this case, there was a franking machine in the middle of the desk with 2 baskets to one side used for placing mail ready for franking. One for first-class postage and the other for second class. For those not in the know as to what a franking machine is, you'd have better luck looking them up, but I'll give you the footnote. When you get mail and you see in the top right printed markings instead of a postage stamp, that is where the franking machine comes in. Businesses can go to Royal Mail and bulk buy postage or whatever. I'm not exactly sure how it works. The franking machines print those postage details onto the envelopes, instead of a person going through the hassle of removing postage stamps from the stamp books and making sure to stick it in the correct place on the envelope. With the machine, the job is done quickly. So down to the malicious compliance. As you have figured out, this compliance was with the franking machine. I was taught how to use the machine. It was already pre-programmed with what to print. All I had to do was select whether to print first or second class postage. Then I would slot an envelope into one side like I was swiping a bank card to pay for groceries. After the envelope enters the machine by a certain amount, the machine activates and pulls the envelope through. I soon found out that this machine had a temper. Sometimes it would take its time pulling the envelopes through. Other times it'd yank the envelope out of your hand and shoot it against the wall. Surprisingly, with an intact, properly printed frank mark. One day I was told, go do the mail, and so I did. I slotted an envelope into the machine, and it did its usual. However, with one new result, it had sliced open the envelope, as in you can remove the letters, etc. From inside the envelope like someone had just opened their mail with one of those letter opener knives. I grabbed the envelope and went to my boss. The following conversation isn't exact, but you get the idea. Boss, what to want? Surely you haven't finished with the mail already. Me. No, I barely started. Boss, then go and finish it. Me. I can't. There's a problem with the franking machine. Boss, there's always a problem with it. Just go back and finish posting the mail. Me. but it's slicing the envelopes open. I tried to show her the sliced envelope. Boss, ignoring the envelope, she said, just frank the mail, will you? Or is that too difficult of a job for someone learning how businesses work? Mean, okay, but it's not my fault if something bad happens. I turned and returned to the mailroom. Along the way, I grabbed some paper and wrote on it that I apologized for the damaged envelopes, that the machine was slicing them open, and that my boss refused to listen to me about it. Then I proceeded to put envelope after envelope through the machine. Everyone came out sliced open. I must have done a couple hundred of them for first class alone. Once done, I didn't put them in mail bags. I just neatly piled them at the side of the machine with the letter on top. About half an hour before the end of my shift, someone came into the office carrying several of the envelopes in my letter. I quickly found out that he was the boss of the business, as in the highest position. He'd apparently stepped into the mailroom with a few of his own letters for franking and found the pile. After arguing with my boss, and me being blamed for it like I was snooping into every envelope to see what I could find, so I volunteered to show what was happening. My boss and her boss grudgingly accepted my offer, so I grabbed a sheet of plain paper from the nearest fax machine and a fresh envelope. Putting the paper in the envelope, I asked Big Boss to seal it as confirmation that it's sealed. I then led them both to the mailroom. At arm's length so they can both watch me, I gently slotted it into the machine until the machine took over. Sure enough, the machine coughed out freshly sliced envelope. Then my boss tried telling me off for not telling her, only for me to say that I tried, but she refused to listen. I only did what I was told. I was let off in the end. The next day, the machine was unplugged, so nothing was getting posted. The day after that, there was a couple of piles of postage stamp books, which of course I had to stick on the envelopes. When I returned for my second week there, I was shown how to use a brand new machine. This new machine was a dream. Just imagine you had spent 10 years driving the same car until it was falling apart, and then you finally upgraded to a new car that is so new. The mileage on it was still double digits. Until I left that place, I was still given menial tasks, but my boss never ignored me again. A few years after leaving school, that business closed up shop. The building then got taken over by a big brand tire company that also did moats, alignments, etc. This story happened 15 years ago when I was in military high school. Every night, we had a mandatory study time from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., which was supervised by an officer. During one of those nights, the officer on duty, a first lieutenant, for our floor, whom I'll refer as Officer Smartpants, was shouting nonsense through the whole study period like you are not silent enough. Because of this noise, I can't hear myself thinking, how do you call yourself soldiers if you can't stay silent for an hour, even though there was only whispering, murmuring voice? Some additional info on the Officer Smartpants. Officer Smartpants was a teacher before, and he applied to become an officer through training. Some of these officers can have ego problems, as they are sometimes 1 or 2 years into the military, whereas we were 4 years already. And they try to assert dominance by being dicks instead of earning respect. As Officer Smartpants was being a jerk to us, we did what any 17-year-old military teen, aka Cadet, does. We planned a petty revenge. You see, our building was an L-shaped building with the officer's desk being in the intersection, and Officer Smartpants always leaves his side cap on his desk when he leaves to shout at us. In our military's unwritten laws, losing the side cap means losing your honor. So, my classmates on the other end of the LA created some noise to distract Officer Smartpants and lure him into their classroom, while me and a friend of mine moved in silence and grabbed and hit Officer Smartpants' side cap. Well, after the commotion ended and Officer Smartpants noticed his side cap was missing, he started freaking out. Normally, when you screwed up like this, you would go to your superior officer and explain the situation, or just easily lie and say you lost it, or you would try to stay indoors until you acquire a new side cap. But in Officer Smartpants' case, he couldn't tolerate such an act from lowly students, so he chose to take us all outside and ordered us to do P's, sit-ups, push-ups, bear walking, standing in the plank, etc. Well, after around 2 hours, the officer on duty in charge of the whole school, a major, came to the training grounds looking for us. Well, there are 2 things that I haven't mentioned before that are relevant to the following result. 1. In our military law, wearing a side cap is a must in open areas. 2, only our direct supervising officers and their supervisors were allowed to make us do PT or any other physical load. Officer Smartpants was in trouble for violating these 2 rules, in addition to the fact that we were late for our nighttime muster. The major released us to go to our dorms, and Officer Smartpants was punished for breaking 2 rules and abusing his authority. Sometime around 2002, my wife and I moved into an 1100 SKFT condominium with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. We were very fortunate to get this condominium as a second owner, and we paid only $114,000, $6,000 more than the original price. Our condo was on the third floor, and all rooms were carpeted throughout the condo, with only one small 4-square square of linoleum inside the front door to the outside breezeway. This will become important later. And yes, even the bathrooms, kitchen, and dining room were carpeted. The front door opened to a large open space with vaulted ceilings, with the great room to the left and the dining room and kitchen to the right. The kitchen area was separated from the great room with a wall that had a cutout over the kitchen sink, and we had a long hallway directly going out of the great room to all the bedrooms and straight in front of the front door. We got to know some of the neighbors and got along well with most of them. The neighbors directly below us were a young couple that were attending university and were nice and cordial with us. Shortly after they graduated, they rented out their condo to a brother and his college friends. The brother was a decent guy, and we mostly had no problems except for one of his birthdays with their music and boisterous conversations and happy birthdays, etc. Kept us up until 4:30 a.m. in the morning. My wife and I returned the favor by blasting our music the very next morning at 8 a.m. But we talked a couple of weeks later and all had a laugh about it and never had any real problems after that. Between 2004 and 2006, we changed all the flooring in the kitchen and dining room to ceramic tile, including the area in front of the front door, to avoid having to pay for carpet cleaning in the dining or kitchen area due to spills or our young daughter throwing food on the floor from her high chair. In 2007, our cordial neighbors sold their condo to an older newlywed couple, late 20s to early 30s. Now, if anyone has lived in between a first and a third floor condo or apartment, you will know that it is the worst place to be if you expect silence. With kids or music, you will always have some noise that filters through the floor or ceiling. I don't know what they were thinking or expecting when they moved in there. I was blissfully unaware that the condo had been sold until one day about a month later, I brought home a powered subwoofer and hooked it up to my home theater sound system. Around 6 months, I promptly put on an action flick with some big explosions and sat down to enjoy the new and improved immersive sound. After a little bit of gunfire and 2 explosions, I hear the doorbell ding-dong. I get up and immediately hear ding-dong again. I walk the 5F to my front door and open it to see my entitled neighbor. I'll call her Karen, standing on my doorstep. Me. Hi, ma'am. Can I help you? Very agitated, Karen. My husband and I are trying to enjoy a quiet and peaceful dinner. Can you please turn down whatever show you are watching? We can hear everything that's going on. Me. Oh, sure. Sorry about that. She turned around and walked away. I closed the door, turned the subwoofer down a ways, and the main volume down a bit and thought nothing of it. Shortly after the next round of gunfire and explosions, I hear the ding-dong and then some rapid fire knocking at my door. I pause my movie and then I open the door to see Karen again. Me. Hi. What can I do for you? Karen, we can still hear everything from your show. You need to turn it down now. At this point, I was a little fed up with her nonsense and decided to call her on it. Me. You say you can hear everything. Can you give me some of the last dialogue you heard? Karen, I don't know. I just know you're watching X show. She was totally wrong. Me. No. I'm actually watching a different movie, and here are the last 3 lines of dialogue, and I gave her those lines. Me. It seems you can't hear my movie as well as you are claiming. Karen, with blazing eyes and red in the face.
I don't care. It's too loud.
You need to turn it down. Me. Actually, the noise ordinance says I don't have to turn it down until 10 p.m. Karen, getting huffy. Fine. I guess my husband and I will have to go out to eat to get some peace and quiet. Me, in my most cheerful voice and waving. Have a good night? I then turned my subwoofer up a little and the main volume back up to its previous level and enjoyed the rest of my movie. The neighbors did end up going out that night for dinner or whatever. At our next HOA meeting, Karen stands up and complains long and loud about the noise. How she can hear kids jumping on the carpeted floor and hear us walking up and down our hallway and hear our music and movies and TV shows, and how the Hispanic neighbors on the first floor play their music on Saturday morning so loud they can't sleep in and argue so loud they can hear every word. This went on for 6 months. Every time she complained, the HOA told her if it's between the hours of 8 and 10, we can do nothing. If it's after 10 p.m. and before 8 a.m., you can call the police and then the HOA would send out a letter by U.S. mail asking everyone to be cognizant of their neighbors and laying out the local city noise ordinance. I finally stopped attending the HOA meetings after 3 months of the same nonsense. She never failed to visit at least once or twice in the week after these notices, and twice she taped them to my door. I also learned during this time that they were members of our church and had actually been assigned to visit us each month. They never did. Cue the pro-revenge. Around the 6-7 month mark of her constant complaints and harassment, and even a couple of visits from some very apologetic police officers after 11 p.m. at night, They said they could hear nothing outside of my condo door. We decided to upgrade our flooring. We knew this would inflame our entitled neighbor, but we didn't care as we were tired of the constant stream of complaints from them. We chose to extend the entry tile all the way from the front door, down the long hallway to the master bedroom door, and we wanted to tile the bathrooms as well. We also went with a light coffee-colored bamboo hardwood in our great room. So, demolition first. We tore out the carpet and tack strips and pried the base molding trim off the walls. As I'm removing the last of the nails from the walls and subfloor at noon on a Saturday, wouldn't you know, bang, 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 from the front door. Me, yes. Karen, can you keep it down? I'm trying to have a pampered chef party. Me, of course. I promptly finished pulling or driving in nails and then proceeded to bang my hammer all over the subflooring like I was driving loads of new nails for the next hour, and made sure to turn on my stereo to the local hard rock station and turn it up for the next 4 hours. While the owner's floor neighbors were already blaring some great mariachi music, they did this every Saturday and Sunday as they cleaned their condo from top to bottom. We then rented a hardwood floor nailer that, in addition to compressor noise and to loudly drive a nail into the flooring and subfloor, also had to be struck with a large dead blowhammer. Bang, 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 bang. It took us 3 days to install the coffee-colored bamboo hardwood flooring in the great room, and we were sure it was driving Karen absolutely batty. We ended up installing an awesome tile inlay down the hall, had tile running from the front door to the master bedroom door along the great room side of the divider wall, tile in the dining room kitchen, and both bathrooms. We got the base molding on, more nail gun and compressor fun, and caulked. The new floors looked amazing, and the bonus was every time a hard shoe, like my daughter's favorite Sunday shoes she wore everywhere, every day or high heel, my wife chose to learn how to do everything in 4 6-inch stilettos during this time, struck the floor. It was like the impact echoed through our perfect floors. All this was due to our neighbor complaining. It was also in preparation to sell our condo as we had grown out of it by this time. We sold it within 1 month of listing at $160,000. During closing, the real estate agent for the new owners told us that the floors absolutely sold this place. We also sold at the very top of the real estate boom right before the real estate market crashed. We later learned from some of our neighbors that within 9 months of our selling our condo, the second floor entitled Neighbours moved out and sold their condo for $30,000 less than we had, and took about an $8,000 loss, and sent a letter of complaint to the HO, stating their condo was unlivable because of the noise from our incredible floors. So, this is an old story from a long time ago when I was still a child with lots of energy. I think I was about 10 or 11 when this incident happened. I remember this day because it was something outstanding that I just couldn't forget. I'm also constantly reminded of it and just remembered about it today and thought, why not share this story? So my dad used to work in a restaurant as a chef. Now, this restaurant was owned by one of my dad's friends of the same ethnicity, and almost all of the employees in the restaurant are of the same ethnicity as me. We're such a close, tight community that everywhere I go, I'm bound to meet someone from that community and we treat each other like family. So if I meet an older lady or man from my community, I refer to them as auntie or uncle in our native language. One day, my mom decided it would be nice to go out to eat instead of cooking and dragged one of my older brothers, me and my younger sister. When we arrived at the restaurant where my dad works, we were greeted with a loud, warm welcome in our native language. Now as a child, you can expect I will be bored instantly, and the phone at the time was a brick phone, so there wasn't any YouTube or games to play. All I had was my younger sister who was busy playing with her stuffed rabbit and older brother to talk to, which also got boring at some point. So being a kid, I decided to look around the restaurant and shyly say hi to any of the customers when I made eye contact with them. When suddenly I bumped into a lady, this really tall lady with long blonde hair and narrow blue eyes looking down on me with a sour expression. At the time, I was scared of any adults with a mean expression towering over me. So I began to cry. I called out for my mom in my native language. And here is when the terrible exchange happened. Karen, oh my God, what's wrong with this child? Is she broken or something because she's speaking gibberish? Mom runs and picks me up while speaking in our native language. It's okay. Calm down. We'll eat some yummy food in a second, so stop crying. Karen, oh my God, even the mother is speaking gibberish. Karen snaps her long, twinkling fingers at my mom. Speak American. Otherwise, your child will never grow up to survive in this country. Don't you know everyone can speak American except for you? Racial slur. I also want to note we don't live in America because our country is a mainly English-speaking country, and for some reason, Karen assumed English was American. My mom was confused because her English isn't perfect, and the Karen spoke really fast before she could even translate it in her head. Everyone in the restaurant, including the customers, looked mad already. One of the chefs from the kitchen walked out. We will name him Uncle Roger. Uncle Roger, in terrible English. Get out. Karen, excuse me? Get out. You're not welcome? You terrible lady? Karen laughs. Oh my God, speak properly, you. Racial slur. I have a lot of money, so you need to shut up. I can use this money wherever I want and make them rich. Thanks to me, so shut up and get to work. Racial slur. You are not welcome here, so get out. She scoffs a laugh.
You racial slur. Shut up and get back to the kitchen and make me some food.
You, racial slur, should just shut up and do your low minimum wage jobs and make me my food. You should be thankful people like me are providing you people with income. So hurry up and make me my food. An elderly lady around her 60 or 70 came from the back of the store with a tight, wrinkled, mean expression, and we'll name her Grandma Sophie. Grandma Sophie in good English. I am the owner of the store. Get out. Get out. We don't welcome you here. Excuse me? I am a customer. Are you pushing away a potential customer? I do not care. Get out, you racist. Gradually, all of the employees, even those that aren't of the same community, yelled at her to get out of the store in perfect English, since the majority of them are young and are studying English compared to the older uncles, aunties, grandmas, and grandpas. A tall, bald white man who is one of the customers gets up from his seat and looms over Karen and yells in her face to get out of the store right this instant, or he will call the cops. This irked Karen until finally she gave up and left. Outside the store were some other ladies who followed close behind Karen, but they didn't do anything and just watched. After they left, all the adults looked at each other happily. Grandma Sophie called the tall white man over for a warm smile and embrace and told him and his family didn't have to pay for their meal because it was on the house as a thanks for helping. I was a kid at the time and was still confused about what just happened, but all I knew was that I was happy that it ended with the Karen leaving. After that incident on that very same day, because of how close our community is, the words of this incident spread like a wildfire. Everyone knew in a second, thanks to the use of brick phones. Everyone in the community kept an eye out for this lady, and they actually managed to spot her. Also because the Grandma Sophie, Uncle Roger, and the other members of the community ensured everyone took a good look at her face from afar. If they saw her on the streets, they made sure other members took a good look at her and warned them about her. Because of how huge our community was, you can guarantee that in a street of restaurants and stores, about 70 of them, has a member of our community, whether they own the business or they work there. Since it was obvious that Karen was an American and was visiting our country for holiday, a lot of the members made Karen's holiday miserable. Whenever she would enter the store, she would be told to leave and was quickly banned from the store. Of course, Karen threw a fit about it, but she can't do anything when there's a lot of us ganged together. If she tries to say anything racist towards one of the members quickly, they would shout racist over her words and would silence out her mean words. If any members passed by her on the streets, they would chuckle and speak in English loudly about what she did to taunt her and would always hint that she's racist. This would always get a reaction from her, and she would often try to verbally fight them. But her friends or family would always stop her before she caused any more damage. Once she left to go home, the community gathered together at someone's house and talked badly about her and what they contributed to make her holiday terrible and how happy they were that the witch left in a terrible mood. We still talk about Karen today over some beers or wine. Everyone remembers it as if it was just yesterday. I didn't remember all the details well since I was a kid, but thanks to the members of my community, I always get refreshed on that day, and thanks to that, I'm able to share this story. Hope she doesn't visit our country again. Edit. To some of the people that loves Grandma Sophie, thanks for your love, but unfortunately she passed away a year ago due to a faulty heart. She's one of those mean but warm grandmas. She would often yell at troublesome kids, and she's those typical get off my lawn. Grandma, but she would always yell out of the goodness of her heart whenever we caused troubles. On her deathbed, she still told us off and said, if I see any of you guys in the afterlife shortly after me, I will learn some sort of martial art and show you what a beating looks like. Let me set the scene. As a teen, I was involved in a lot of live theater. For those that don't know, shows require several hours of nightly practice for months before hitting the stage. Being the eldest of my siblings, I also acted as chauffeur for them when my parents were at work. One particular Wednesday, I was tasked with taking my siblings to our church for the dinner, services, and other activities before my play practice. When we got to the church, my siblings went their respective ways, and I took the opportunity to eat dinner. Grabbing my plate, I took a seat at a random table and started making friends with the others seated there. The majority of my conversations were with a decent-looking guy that seemed to be close to my age, if not a few years older. We had a good conversation going, but my time quickly ran out, and I had leave for practice. We exchanged Facebook information, and that was that. At the time, I did have Facebook on my phone, but the theater had terrible service reception, and I often didn't have time to check my phone anyway. So it was 3 or more hours later that I got home to open my computer and see his messages on Facebook. He had sent a long string of messages that went something like this.
Hey.
Hey, are you ignoring me? Why won't you answer? Screw you, I didn't like you anyway, witch. I was freaked out by the messages and didn't know how to respond. So I went to my dad and asked him how I should handle the situation. My dad went protector mode and started asking me questions. So I showed him the messages and watched the color drain from his face. Dad, crap. What? Dad, I'm interviewing this guy tomorrow? I have no clue if the guy ever put together what happened as he got blocked on my social media that night. Needless to say, calling the daughter of the boss names is a very bad interview tactic, and he didn't get the job.